pjnet.tv. It is 9:30 East Coast time, and you are about to see and hear amazing stories from an amazing man who we haven't seen in a long, long time. And he is standing by in our green room. We are streaming. We are recording. We have a chat room eager to meet and greet. And we will count it down to Studio 33 Alpha, starting now. Well, good evening and welcome, or welcome back, as the case may be. This is pjnet.tv. I'm Coach Prasick, and I am so honored and thrilled. I'm just beside myself with the notion that God has blessed me to sit here and just have conversation with God's people, brothers and sisters in Christ who have stories to tell and stories to share. And hopefully their stories will be an encouragement and an inspiration to you. We provide a platform for everyday Christians to share their walk with Christ. Well, let's do that. Well, Cecil Stokes is probably a notch above, or maybe several notches above everyday Christian. He is an incredible, talented professional with, the first time I met you, Cecil, was at a Christian Writers Conference. And you were teaching a class on film, screenplays and such as that. And that was a long time ago, but I still remember some of the things that you said, even though I wasn't there as a class participant. So much great work, so much great content never sees the light of day because of funding. Mm-hmm. That's sad. We need to step up the game. But your professional life took a turn here recently, not real recent, but a door opened and you just took a different direction, moved to Texas. Why'd you do that? Doesn't make sense, does it?
Well, I think when we listen to God, it sometimes doesn't make sense to us, at least in the present. But it generally does at some point. And you're right. My story is not what I anticipated. For over 20 years, I was unbelievably blessed to get to write or produce or direct over 500 TV shows, 3 films, hundreds of commercials, and just travel the world. I think 36 countries, 46 states. It was incredible. And then I adopted my son Boone from the foster care system. He was 8 years old. We're actually going to be celebrating 7 years together in about 2 weeks. So he's now 15 and a teenager. And when he arrived, things just began to shift. I think as they do anytime you become a parent. Mm-hmm. And the more and more I learned about the U.S. foster care system, the more I realized that it was growing a special place in my heart. And I wanted to help kids like Boone because I couldn't adopt them all. And about 3 years ago, Boone had gone to a little summer camp, and on the last day, I had gone in for their award ceremony, and they did these fun little dances and cheers. And I remember it was 4/23 on Friday. I think it was like July 26th, so the anniversary is coming up. And I just remember hearing him say, "You worked for the world. Are you ready to work for me?" And I remember breaking down in tears, and I was on the front row. So Boone's looking at me like, "What's wrong with you? Are you okay?" And I had been called into ministry, which meant we had been called into ministry. So I started seeking God to find out what he meant. Was he going to continue to use the gifts that he had given me for film and television and writing, or was it something new? And Boone and I actually started a nonprofit called Boone and Me. Mm-hmm. And we began traveling around the country sharing our adoption story to encourage others to foster and to adopt from foster care. And about a year into that is when the pandemic happened. And of course, we were not able to travel anymore. So I began seeking a full-time job helping foster children or vulnerable children in our country. And after months of seeking and interviewing and praying, I was hired by the Global Orphan Project, and one of their ministries is called CarePortal, and their greatest need was in the city of Houston. So they asked us if we would be willing to move to Houston to launch their CarePortal ministry here. And that was almost 2 years ago.
Cecil, this is amazing. You must have come under a lot of conviction. Did you feel like maybe that your years in the film industry were wasted or something, or was God just pivoting you to a new calling?
I feel like my years in the film industry were a ridiculous blessing. I mean, I think children dream of getting to live the life and career that I had, and I had it for 20 years. And so I couldn't be more thankful for that time. But I believe that when you are in check with the Spirit and when you are truly communing with God, that any journey that He sends you on is equally exciting, even if it may not look that way to the world or to your pocketbook or so many different avenues. But I do want to share a story. It's an amazing story that I want to write one day. But Boone, because he had been in foster care, told me months away from our move, he said, Daddy, he said, you're going to have to help me move because I've never moved on purpose before. And I thought that was such a wise statement, from a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
Because in foster care, you may go to school and somebody else pick you up that afternoon. Your social worker takes you to a new place. Right. So he had never moved on purpose before. And so I feel like we had a TED Talk a day for about 3 months preparing for the move. And I thought we had covered every base. And the day that the move came, our movers were behind and late, and we were leaving the house, an empty house, around 8 o'clock at night. And it was a few minutes after 8. And we had both remained very strong because we knew God was leading us. And we ended up standing at the very place where we met. When his social worker brought him to our house for the first time, we're standing just beyond the front door, and he just began to sob. And it all happened at that moment. Right. And I can't do this anymore because he's so much smaller. I just pulled him into my chest and rested my chin on top of his head. And God gave me a vision of a little baby dinosaur pecking its way out of an egg. And Boone loves dinosaurs. And so it made complete sense to me. And I shared with him, I said, God just gave me a vision of a little dinosaur breaking its way out of a shell. And I believe what that means is that this house was the shell where our family was born. But to grow, we have to move beyond it. And he absorbed that and agreed. And 8 minutes later, as we're driving out of that neighborhood for the last time, we're laughing. And it was a beautiful moment. And we had to be in Houston on a certain day. And even though the movers had been late, we had to drive 3 hours that night to stay on schedule. And, we were in the dark of night on the interstate, little tiny town that I don't remember the name of. And at about 11 o'clock, almost 11 o'clock, Boone says, I'm hungry. And I said, well, wherever we see next, we will stop because I have no idea what our options are. And we ended up seeing this very small little McDonald's on the side of the interstate. There was nothing else around it. And I said, we'll just pull in here. And we had stopped eating fast food about 3 years before that, just to try to be a little bit healthier. And so when I pulled through the drive-thru, I just ordered him a Happy Meal, even though he was 12 years old, because that's what I remember ordering him the last time we were at McDonald's. And as we are pulling out of the drive-thru, he opens that box, and the toy is a little dinosaur crawling out of an egg.
Oh, no. Really?
And even though we have had some hard times since we have moved and had some ridiculous spiritual warfare, we look at that little dinosaur that we named Bumpy, and we didn't realize we were prophesying the road ahead of us. But he's on a shelf in our living room, and we just look at him and know God brought us here. This is the season where God has called us. So we have no doubt that we're not following exactly what he wants us to do and where he wants us to be. So though I miss storytelling in video form, it's easy to put it to the side when you know you're doing what God's called you to do, and he blesses you so greatly in that knowledge.
Amen. Well, I saw a story you told on social media just the other day that really moved me. Because I think anybody that has been in your life, even at a distance, know that you and Boone are like peas and carrots. I mean, there is no that you just go together and but you posted that Boone's growing up now because you were going somewhere and he had a special request.
Yeah, it's funny. We get told all the time that we look alike, which is unfortunate for Boone, but I think it's just a little God wink that, we were made to be together. And even today, there were some folks in our neighborhood buying our book. So we arrived at one lady's house who didn't know us. She was a friend of a friend. And she was like, "Oh, you two look so much alike." And we just smile and say thank you because we believe God did create us to be together. And we are inseparable. I'm a single dad. I homeschool. So we're together 24/7. And I am stunned at the love that we have for each other and the grace that we have for each other. But the reason we named our ministry Boone and Me is because I knew one day I may not be part of the ministry. And it would be Boone's story that he would share. So anyone he meets, it's Boone and me. And so they're the me in Boone and Me. And he went to church camp in Florida a few weeks ago and was so sunburned after 2 days, he was banned from the beach and spent most of his time with the nurses. But one of the nurses was married to the head of the film department at our church. And so they decided they wanted to tell our story at our church for the missions team. And we go in for the pre-interview and they realize after talking to both of us, they don't need me. They just want to tell Boone's story. And I'm thrilled at that. And so we were arriving early on a Wednesday night a couple of weeks ago, and we had invited 4 of his best friends to go with him. And they were going to shoot him and his friends talking and him sharing his story and then show them doing what they do before church every Wednesday. They were playing basketball, playing football, just doing all these fun things. And so as we're driving there, I normally just, he hops out of the door and he signs in on the iPad and he's gone for a few hours. And I go to my men's group. We were actually going to be together that night. So as we approached the church, he said, and we were meeting 4 of his best friends, and he said, "Do you think when we go in that maybe you could walk a few steps behind me so that they don't all know you're my dad?" And I know that is so typical with almost every teenager, and you think it's never going to happen to you. But God has given me the gift of rolling with the punches. And when he said that, I laughed so hard. And I told him, I said, "Not only am I not going to walk behind you, when I meet your friends, I'm going to talk with the worst Southern accent I can muster and ask them if they can help me find the cupcake store." Because and that would embarrass him greatly. And he quickly recanted and was fine walking in the church with me.
Well, Boone's growing up.
He is. He'll be 16 in November. It's crazy.
Yeah. I'm remembering in my own life. It's funny you mentioned that there's an appearance, that Boone and yourself have a likeness. Well, people said the same thing about my father and I'm adopted. But they always said there was it's probably not just a coincidence. It's probably, as you so well said, it was all just part of God's plan. But anyway, I love you to the sun and beyond. I mean, there's so, and I gotta say this, folks. You wrote this together with Michelle Medlock Adams. All right, now I'm experiencing, and our producer Barbara is experiencing dyslexia with the title that just came out yesterday. but so I had to put the book cover here in the studio to keep it to make it right. As I look at this illustration on the cover, what inspired those 2 people? They kind of look like maybe Boone and me.
We worked with an amazing illustrator. Being a visual person, I think I had ridiculously detailed notes when we wrote the book. And thankfully, we were paired with an amazing, amazing, amazing illustrator from Taylor University named Jonathan Bow. And he worked so closely with us over every single image that is in the book. And I did ask him maybe about halfway through the creation of all the illustrations. I said, I'd love for you to do a page that has Michelle and her family in it, and maybe do a page that has Boone and me. And this cover is a pretty similar shot of Boone and me. We're both, I've got much better hair in the illustration, but that is supposed to represent me and Boone. And honestly, I think he captured this, because I'm often trying to point things out and explain them to Boone, and he's, taking them in. And,
and it's so adventurous,
It is. And then we do that. I try to create so many memories with him and take him on so many adventures. And even in the book, Boone loves sharks also, and there's a short fin mako shark in the book, and so Boone and I are also the characters on that page. And then there's a museum setting where we're talking about Tesla and Rosa Parks, and it's Michelle's family, and I'm stunned. The images of me and Boone kind of look like us. The image of Michelle and her family look identical to her, but I'm going to steal her joke. The way it's really not her is she's wearing flats, and that would never happen in real life.
Yep. But she is wearing black or leopard skin.
Correct.
Right. I mean, that's a signature. Well, I just get the feeling when I see that title, that title smacks more of Michelle, doesn't it?
It doesn't, because actually Boone and I have a little saying to each other, and we write it on notes, and we say, "I love you to the sun, SON, and beyond," letting each other know that we love each other, to heaven, to Jesus. And so I told Michelle that title one day. We get together, and she's Aunt Michelle to Boone, and whenever we can go to their house or her come to ours, even though we're in different states, we do it. And we were just brainstorming book ideas together. And I told her that story, and we thought it would be a Christian book. And as we began to write it, there's a Solomon story in it, but then all the others ended up being great things about the world and amazing facts about the world. So we changed it to SUN, and it ended up getting picked up by a division of Simon & Schuster, so a really big general market publisher. And we're thrilled with that. And we told them when they bought the book, we said, we have a Christian version in our hearts. And after they saw the amazing illustrations for this and read the book, they said, we're interested in seeing that Christian version. So Michelle and I got together and fleshed it completely out and finished writing it and sent it off. And literally, it's the quickest thing that's ever happened in either of our careers. Within 3 days of writing the book, they had bought it with one of their Christian divisions. And we wanted it called I Love You to the SON and Beyond, but they thought that could be confusing and a little similar.
Right.
So it's actually going to be called I Love You From Here to Heaven Above. But it's a very similar book where you're trying to one-up your child and telling them how much you love them while teaching them facts. But in the second book, all the facts are going to be from the Bible.
Right. Well, things may have happened quickly in the initial stages, but this book is actually very, very, very delinquent.
It is. We actually wrote this book 3 years ago, and it was picked up actually pretty quickly, but there were just such delays in publishing at the time, and then the pandemic, and it was actually supposed to release in April of this year, and then prior to that, October of last year. And just with production and shipping, it was continually delayed. So I know it's in God's timing, and we're thrilled that it came out last week. But yes, it was a baby that needed more than its normal 9 months.
Well, it must be God's timing, because the industry, normally you would not see this a release of 2 books so close to each other, by the same, with Michelle being the common denominator. That's not supposed to happen.
It's not, but it's tough, for Michelle when we get contracts to figure, for people to figure out when books come out, because she has 5 children's books coming out just this year alone. So it's partnering with her is a huge blessing but there's sometimes a little negotiating that comes from the contracts because she's so prolific.
Mm-hmm. I have seen Michelle, and I may be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Michelle really made a name for herself writing children's books. But here lately, it seems like Michelle is sharing her blessings with others who have been along with her in this journey. Did she just pick up the phone one day and call you, or what happened?
I think whatever story I tell is what will go down in history, because I'm not sure either one of us know. We met at the Blue Ridge Mountains Christian Writers Conference about 12 or 13 years ago. Mm-hmm. And we just had an immediate liking to each other. And through the years, realized we were the siblings that neither one of us had asked for or wanted. Michelle truly is the only person in the world who bosses me around. And that makes her
you're not the only one.
That makes my son, she is his favorite person in the world, because he has never heard anyone talk to me the way Michelle talks to me. And an example of that is, when we were living in North Carolina, Michelle came down actually to write this book. And one afternoon I had some work calls, and I lived in this great village that you could walk to a bookstore. And Michelle said, Boone and I are going to walk to the bookstore while you're on this call. And I, called out, from my computer screen, well, don't feel like you have to buy him anything. And she put her head back around the door and she said, you're not my boss. And sure enough, they came back with 2 big bags full of books and toys.
Oh, yeah.
And she's an amazing Aunt Michelle to Boone. But yes, she has. I really think I may have been the one that said to her at some point, I would love to try to write a children's book with you. And I think it's something we talked about for years before we sat down and did it. Mm-hmm. You're certainly right. When you look at the beautiful creations she's had coming out lately, she's been partnering with a lot of different people. I, of course, believe I'm her favorite. But she has been doing a lot of partnerships and just creating some amazing things for Kingdom.
Well, she's a blessing to many. Well, Boone's he'll be 16 very soon, right? Mm-hmm. Is it too early to say? Or are you noticing any propensities or any inclinations or any special skills that might predict what Boone's future will look like?
I have a few answers to that. One is when I was doing television, he was strangely gifted. I would be watching a rough cut, which is the first cut that comes in from a producer for me to give notes on. Mm-hmm. And Boone could sit with me and he would be able to snap his fingers at the exact moment a cut needed to happen in their sound bites. Mm-hmm. So he has a film and video bend to him. Mm-hmm. But then also he has a few book ideas. He would love to do some children's books. And we're actually talking to one publisher about a children's book from Boone right now. But truly, in my heart, I believe that God has anointed him and called him to share his story. So I truly believe Boone and me is going to be his future, and that he will be able to work with people like CarePortal and Global Orphan Project and help vulnerable children and foster care children for his entire life. He's a very anointed speaker. When we were on Focus on the Family a couple of years ago, and again, at that time, he was maybe 13 years old. At the end of the broadcast, the host said to us, you guys are Batman and Robin. And then they quickly cleared up that I was not Batman. So he's really gifted.
Well, that's good to hear, and keep us posted. Cecil, I'm sorry it's been so long since we've gotten together. And folks, by the way, Cecil really stepped up. How many hours notice did you get that we needed some help tonight?
I think I got close to 24, which is a lot.
Oh yeah, that's but Cecil, we miss you, and in the few times that I've had the pleasure of sharing time together with you, you have impacted my life, and God has used you in a big way in so many other lives, and I'm just proud of you in so many ways. Any chance of getting back in the film industry?
God gave me some blessed gifts to be able to tell stories, and it was in the visual medium for 20 years, and I don't believe that God ever wastes the talents that he gives us. So I think down the road, there is absolutely a possibility that maybe my love for children and foster care and telling stories may be able to merge, and he'll bring something together out of the different careers that he's called me to. But
And
I'm certainly open
it
to
could be
it.
vicariously through Boone, you know.
Very well could be.
It could be, but I know that it's just a thrill talking to you, Cecil. I know you're the happiest dad in the world. It just, God has been so gracious, and not only blessing you, but extending those blessings to others through your life and through your ministry. And I just love hearing stories. This is what PJ Net is for, is to hear what God's doing in the lives of his people. And you're just a wonderful testimony. We appreciate you sharing with us. And we'll have to get back again we won't wait a year and a half next time, hopefully.
That sounds great.
All right. We love you, brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, folks, if that doesn't inspire you or encourage you, you probably need to see a doctor or perhaps a mortician. I don't know. What a interesting and dynamic, and and we didn't get to talk about. He came from such humble beginnings. He used to. Well, last time he was on, he had a picture of his house he grew up in, and folks, it's just at the end of a little dirt road. I mean, it's just amazing what God is doing. So no matter where you find yourself at this season in your life, God's not done with you yet. And Cecil was obedient and willing to take a complete pivot in his life. Are you willing to do that? I have a challenge for you. I'm going to ask 2 questions, and you don't have to answer me, but I hope that you'll honestly answer yourself. First question is, what is the boldest thing that you've ever done for Jesus Christ? Turn your back on a successful film career to go to Texas? Might be that. Might be something else. Second question is, how long ago was that? And the challenge is to never be satisfied with either answer.